All right, so let's look at our task. We have sidebar navigation, wrong logo when switching to mobile view. It's telling us that our expected behavior should have a header that always shows the larger logo. But currently, when the user switches the device orientation from desktop to mobile, the small logo is always shown. We can see that here we are in the collapse state, but we see that small logo when we change the orientation of the iPad. We can reproduce this on the desktop by minimizing the viewport, and you can see here that when we change the collapse state, we have the small logo, and then when we change the viewport width, we have the small logo. So we want to make sure that the large logo is shown. So if we look here in our Figma designs, we can see the sidebar with large, mobile is small. Let's look at the components, and we'll see that the sidebar open has a large, collapsed is small, and the mobile is large. So let's reproduce it. Let's change it to the iPad Air. If we rotate it with the large logo sidebar not collapsed, we'll get that large logo. That's what we want. But if we collapse it and rotate it, we're going to get that small. We don't want that. We can go back to desktop and reproduce it ourselves. If we minimize it, we're going to get that large. That's great. But if we collapse it, then we're going to get that small. We don't want that. And after we're done with writing the code for this, we will then write a test. So let's go look at the code and see what we're working with. Let's look at the sidebar navigation, and let's pull up our CSS. So we see here we got our container, and we have our header with our image, and we've got a sidebar that shows a small or large logo based upon its collapse state. So that's what we're seeing, but it's not doing anything depending upon the viewport width. So in our CSS here, logo changes when we have a collapse state in the desktop, and then its default is a wide width. So nothing is happening to changing the logo itself, and that's what we want to do. So I think a couple options are we could work with the React JavaScript. We could come in here and listen for like the window inner width and then show one image or the other. Concern that I have with that is when we transition from desktop to mobile viewport width, that the viewer will actually see the large or the small logo here for just a little bit longer than they should. The other option is CSS. We could go for a content property, or we could go for the display property. I'm going to go with the display property. Don't think there's one way better than the other. All context is different, but that's the route that we'll take here. So let's get to work. Okay, so what I've done here is I've created two tags, small and the large. Both of them will have their default styles, and then, like we said, depending upon their collapse state, will tell us whether or not we do one thing or the other. So let's work on our CSS. So we'll give small logo and large logo their properties, and then hide or show them depending upon their collapse state. Okay, so we created a small logo and a large logo. The small logo will have that width, the large logo will have this width. Its default is display none. For the large logo, it's going to show. And the small logo will show when we have a desktop viewport width and it is collapsed. It's the only time it's going to show. Whereas the large logo in the desktop viewport width, it will show as long as it's not collapsed. If it is collapsed, then we want to not show it. And we'll check here. So here it is, not collapsed. And we're showing that large and we're keeping the large. That's what we want. And now it's collapsed, so we show the small and we change and we show the large. Let's look at the iPad. So we have the large And we keep the large, we collapse it, we get the small, and we get the large. And there we have it. So let us now write a test to make sure that what we are expecting to happen is actually happening. So we're going to go into our Cypress, our end-to-end tests, and in our navigation. So I think what we'll do is we'll write a test that says something like, it shows the large logo when transitioning from desktop to mobile viewport in the collapse state. So let's go ahead and write that. All right, so we have a test here. It says that we want to be able to see the large logo after transitioning from the desktop to mobile viewport in a collapse state. So what we're going to do is we're going to first collapse the sidebar navigation. Then we will change that viewport. So in the test here, we collapse that navigation. Then we change that viewport. Then we check that the large logo is visible. So we're going to get the header. We're going to find the image tag that says has a source of logo large, and then we're going to check that it is visible. Then we're going to get the header again. We're going to find the small logo, and we're going to make sure that it is not visible. So let's run that test. We'll run Cypress. So we run the test, links are working, it is collapsible, and the show large passes. And just to check, we do go to the website, we have a viewport width at the desktop, and we get our navigation. We click on the collapse, so we're in the collapse state. Then we change to iPhone 8, so here we are. And we're going to find that header. We're going to look for the large, and we see that it is visible. We're going to get the header again. We're going to find the small logo. So here it is. This is what it brought back. And we find that it is not shown at all. So our test passed.